Hey, Rob here from Black Label Minis. It's been a minute, and Happy New Year. This week we are working on the Stark Bowmen for Cool Minis Song of Fire and Ice game. So after priming in a light gray, I'll go ahead and start off with a US blue gray. Remember as always to thin your paints down with water or other medium, and always apply multiple thin coats as opposed to one thick one. Now I want the boots and the belts to be a leather color but remain different, so I'll use a darker leather here, leather brown from the model color line. And I was saying two different browns. This time I'm going to go with the more orangish brown from the game color line, leather brown. And I'm going to use this also on all the pouches and straps. Now the bows are something of a conundrum to paint. They're almost always flat and have very little definition to them. For mine, I wanted a more rich wood color, so I went with a mahogany brown. Now let's base coat all the metals in black. This way the color will cover easy and have a nice contrast. Remember to thin this down and apply some flow improver to help the color to sink into all the pieces of the chainmail also. Now on the skin, pretty much this here is just a basic color of beige red and basic skin tone mixed 50-50. The fingers are really small, so do your best not to destroy what detail is there. The clothing in this era, especially that of common people, was pretty much devoid of color and was typically some variant of brown. So for that, I'm going to use some green brown. Back to the metallic areas. Let's mix a dab of black into some steel. We don't want to completely desaturate this, just a tiny bit to knock out the shine. Also, do not forget about the arrow tips. On to the washes. Now for the skin, we'll be using a Reichian Flesh Shade, and for everything else, let's use Agrex Earth Shade. After giving the minis about a half hour to dry, let's start off with the tunics again with the original blue-gray. We're going to be aiming for the higher areas and leaving the insides and the recesses in the shade. Now when you're happy with your highlight, go ahead and add some pale gray blue to your color and go back over these same areas again. We're going to look to color the outer edges of the clothing as well as the highest points. Now if your highlight is starting to look a little chalky or spotted, try adding some flow improver. Just make sure you touch your brush to a paper towel before you put it on the model. Now, just in case if you forgot, you can use that same pale blue-gray for the wolf emblem. Going over the clothing here, first with the green-brown. Just as before, we're going to be focusing on the higher areas. I say higher spots, but these guys are lucky to have folds or raised areas at all on them. After that, grab a nice bright yellow, not a gold yellow, just a bright yellow. Something along the lines of moon dust from Army Painter. Add a brush tip or two into the green-brown and highlight those folds. If you bothered attempting to shade the bow, go back over it with the mahogany brown again. When complete, add your favorite yellow color again. Focus on the very top edge, the upper outside curve, and the lower inside curve. Back to the leather browns. First, the boots again. Try and pick out the curves in the leather and the outer portions of the calves. After that, we'll add some yellow to this. If you're wondering why yellow, because yellow will saturate the browns, whereas white or gray will just desaturate the color itself. And we're going to be aiming for the upper sections of the folds. They are small here, so try not to go too overboard. Just as with the leather boots, we'll repeat the same steps with the belts and the pouches. For the arrow shaft, lay down a little bit of khaki. The darker the khaki, the better. And then hit the top edge with the same leather brown we just used on the belt. For the flechettes, grab either a gray-white or a white-gray color. There's little to no definition on this, so don't worry about doing highlights. Now going back over the skin, we just want to do our best to find the knuckles on the hand holding the flechette side. The side holding the bow has better definition, and we want to just highlight the top of the hand and the bend edges of the fingers. Grab some plain steel here and a tiny flat brush. Make sure you use a towel to take about 90% of the paint off, and then do a light dry brush on the mail and the helmet, then hit the tips of the arrows again. Here we are, Stark Bowmen for Cool Mini or Not, a Song of Ice and Fire miniature game. These guys are pretty straightforward. We're just trying to get the tabards into a shade of blue-gray for the Stark House. I'd say the hardest part of these minis is actually painting the bows, because you're going to want to try and highlight them, but there's not a whole lot to highlight here. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Remember to like, subscribe, and share, and if possible, please consider contributing to my channel via the Patreon or PayPal links below. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. And remember, if nothing else, paint something.